there's a lot of different ways we can approach it, and I think everybody's going to be a little bit different, right? Sometimes we can rip the bandage off and just like never look back and like let go of whatever safety behaviors we're doing.
Sure.
And then there's other people that it's like, yeah, it doesn't feel right to rip off the bandage. I'm going to take it nice and slow, and it'll happen organically, and
Yeah.
and that's how it was for me. Like I just was like, and there's no pressure, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. That was huge. I had such a huge fear and inner conflict around the meds that it kept me so stuck for so long. I don't have that anymore. I'm so grateful. And
Right.
so now it just doesn't matter, right? It's like, it just doesn't matter. And the truth of the matter is, it never did. But, and this is key, nothing is a problem unless we think it is a problem.
Mhm.
It's just true. If you start thinking that it's a problem, that you're licking this pill or that you're taking this or that or whatever, your mind's going to flag that as a problem.
Yeah.
And when it does flag it as a problem, now we have an issue,
Yeah.
right? We create this mountain out of a molehill. And if we keep thinking it's a problem, this is the same way insomnia develops, by the way. If we keep thinking it's a problem, our brain, this brilliant thing that it is, it actually creates a neural pathway around
Yeah.
that. Now it's a loop. And now it's such a big problem that every time, this comes up, that neural loop is it's just like a neural feedback loop. Hi, community. Welcome to another episode of Allie's Take. I'm Coach Allie. I'm happy to be with you today. And I've got my friend and fellow coach, Coach John, with me here today. And I'm really happy that you decided to join me for today's episode. Thanks for reaching out about this topic. I'm really excited to talk about this with you today.
Yeah, me too, Allie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. This is such a interesting topic because we get so much information inundated to us all the time about
Mhm.
sleep and how important it is, and there's so many misconceptions about sleep out there. And so I think this is a really great episode to do to kind of demystify some of that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I know exactly.
Awesome. So we'll just jump right into this, our conversation today about sleep myths. And the first one we're going to talk about is this myth that's been going around for I don't even know how long, but for a long time,
Yeah.
about how we all need 8 hours of sleep, right? Like this,
Mhm.
it's so important that we all get 8 hours of sleep. And that's obviously not actually true. But tell me what you think about this one, John.
I mean, it's such a 8 hours is such a golden standard for a lot of people. I mean, even people who typically don't struggle from insomnia, never struggle with insomnia. I, I mean, to the belief that they need to consistently get that much sleep throughout the night, and the fact that if they wake up at all during the night, even if it's only for 10, 15 minutes, it's just awful, and that it's going to be they're going to develop some scary medical condition. That's not helpful to anyone who has insomnia at
Not
all.
at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it creates like this insurmountable. I mean, for people who are struggling to get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, to think like it's so demoralizing to hear that from their perspective when they're doing everything, literally everything that they could be doing, whether it's helpful or unhelpful, to then think like I'm supposed to get like double this. Are you kidding me? Like,
Right.
hard enough as it
Right.
is. And furthermore, I mean, there have been plenty of times that I noticed in my own insomnia recovery, and I'm sure that this was the case for you, where there are times when I would sleep for 6.5 hours, which isn't bad by any means, but I wouldn't feel good. And conversely, I would wake up feeling fine. I would get only 5 hours of sleep, and I'd feel much, much better. Uh,
Mhm.
so I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about this. I've just for my clients, instead of focusing on the number of hours that people sleep, um, or the number of times they wake up during the night, I instead rely on the benchmark of, look, when you get out of bed in the morning, do you feel good or do you not feel good? Or how
Mhm.
good do you feel? Let's just keep it
Mhm.
really simple.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and especially like in our way of teaching, right? We approach it with more of this like timeless sleep window, right? So
Mhm.
so we try to take the math equation out of the picture entirely because our brain is just constantly doing sleep math, right? When we have insomnia. And
Yeah.
even people that haven't necessarily developed insomnia but that are experiencing some sleep disruption, right? It's always like this math game in the middle of the night. Well, if I fall
Mhm.
asleep right now, then I'm going to get 3.5 hours. And if
Oh,
and
man.
it's a nightmare. And it's also creates so much pressure, right?
Mhm.
And so the timeless sleep window is really just about an invitation to let go of that pressure, right? When I work with clients, not a single client that I have worked with has looked at the time at 3 a.m. and felt good about that, right? It always kind of
Never.
sends us into a panic, like, oh no, it's 3 a.m. I haven't slept at all, right?
Yeah.
So it's just not helpful for us to buy into this idea that we all need this 8 hour, sleep. And also I love this thing that Daniel says about it. He's like, we all have a different shoe size. We all have different
Mm.
pant size, shirt size. Like we're all different in those ways. Like fundamentally, our biology, our anatomy, all of that stuff, we're the same. But we have differences, right? We all have a different size of shoe, and we all have a different kind of ideal sleep number. And it's really helpful to understand that one that's going to change all the time throughout our lives, right? Maybe we become parents, that
Mhm.
obviously is going to change things. Age, going through different, hormonal changes and just getting older, that can change things.
Of
So
course.
many things can change, the our ideal sleep number. And I think that's the other really thing to keep in mind. It's like when we talk about that timeless sleep window, we talk about like, okay, this is what is ideal for the rest of your life, not just while you're struggling with insomnia, right? What's your sleep window, your ideal sleep window for the rest of your life? So for example, mine's 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., right? Now
Mhm.
that doesn't mean I'm going to be sleeping all of those hours, not at all. That's my preference, but I don't
Mhm.
have control over that. But I am going to stop looking at the clock at 10:30. I'm going to do whatever I want, if sleep isn't coming, to befriend and embrace wakefulness, to not fight with the reality of what's showing up.
Mhm.
And then, come 6:30, I'm going to get out of bed and start my day, whether or not I've slept or not, right? Is the idea with this.
Mhm.
So I think that it can be really helpful for people to understand that this is just it really isn't true. It's a myth. Everyone's sleep need is different and it just can change often. And with insomnia, when we have that extra pressure of what you just said, right? If I don't get these 8 hours, something terrible is going to happen. Like all these, people have so much health anxiety that comes up around this, and
Mhm.
it's just not true. Like we don't. There's no studies that actually show any health issues with short sleep or little sleep, right? We always talk about the correlation versus causation,
Mhm.
right? And some of these studies are going to show correlation. You can correlate anything to anything you want, right? That doesn't identify cause. So I think that was really helpful for me when I was going through this, because we've all been sold that bill of goods that 8 hours, right, is like you said, the golden number. And it's just not true, and it's really not helpful. It can keep us in this cyclical struggle for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that you were spot on with everything that you said. Sometimes I kind of wonder. I'm saying this half jokingly. If all of the research that we've done for sleep has just only hurt people's sleep, because I mean, if you go on every single big name podcast, everyone talks about how important it is. And yeah, yes, so of course sleep is important, but it
Right,
almost gets to the point where it's this almighty revered thing that it is the one thing that's separating you from having a good life and being a
right.
productive member of society, which
Yeah,
is just not. I mean, like there have been plenty of times when what I do to encourage my clients is like, hey man, yeah, I've been through insomnia myself, and when I got over it, I mean, I sleep totally fine just now. I still have plenty of days where things aren't easy for me. It's not like it's this switch where as soon as you start getting 8 hours of sleep, all of your life's problems are going to be solved and stuff. It's like no, and there have been plenty of times when I was running on really crummy sleep, and I was able to exceed my expectations in terms of
Yeah.
performance.
It's so true. And I think it's such a good and important point. We kind of sleep isn't a magic elixir. And when we're going through something like insomnia, we have put sleep on this pedestal, right?
Mhm.
Almighty sleep, bowing down to this God of sleep, right? And
Yeah.
it really has so much power over us, right? There's
Mhm.
this huge emotional attachment.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps us in the struggle.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that more a little bit later, but it's really, really helpful if we can see sleep for what it is, and it's just sleep. Sometimes we're going to sleep well and that's our preference, and sometimes we're not. And that's okay too, because it's actually normal and it's human. No one has perfect sleep. I don't care what they tell you. Every human has sleep disruption from time to time. We all do.
Of
It's
course.
just part of it. And when we develop insomnia, then we've got a conditioned fear response, to conditioned stress response, however you choose, to name it. But
Mm.
condition just means learned. That's all that word means. And so
Yeah.
if we can learn something, we can unlearn it. And that's what's so cool about, our approach to insomnia recovery. So yeah, I think those are such good points, John. And I think it will really help people to just see that it's just not true. And it will keep us stuck if we continue to think of sleep in this way, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and something that I've been telling clients recently is, yeah, and to your point of where people, it gets to the point where people start worshiping this god of sleep. It gets to the point where they start living to sleep,
Yep. Yep.
which is, sleep should be there to help us,
Mm-hmm.
and not
Mm-hmm.
the other way around. It's becomes this very back ass words thing of
It does.
going about life,
Yeah.
and it
Yep.
doesn't help anyone. It's never
No.
helped anyone, I don't think. You know.
No. No, and until sleep really fell off the pedestal for me, I was a slave to it. I was, so had such an emotional reaction when I didn't sleep the way I thought that I was supposed to or I wanted to.
Mhm.
And it was such a strong emotional reaction that attachment really perpetuated the struggle. And
Yeah.
so as that's how recovery works, is we lessen our attachment to this by focusing on things that we like, are things that we value in our life,
Yeah.
moving towards those regardless of what happens at night. Yeah. Yeah. So, moving on to our second point here, the myth we're going to talk about is, if I do everything right, right, all the sleep hygiene stuff, no
Mm.
blue light, I mean, gosh, there's so many of them. What is it, like sunlight as soon as we wake up?
Yeah.
There's so many. Like, we could go on and on, like
Oh,
dark out blinds, you
yeah.
know,
Yep.
all the things, no TV. So if I do everything right, all these sleep hygiene things, I can fix my sleep. And the truth, of course, here is our sleep system cannot be broken. And sleep hygiene is just not helpful when it comes to insomnia, because it focuses on controlling our environment,
Mm.
right? Which is constantly changing. And our sleep system is so much more adaptable than we believe it to be. And so this, again, just keeps us in the struggle. What are your thoughts on this, John?
Yeah, so people with insomnia, I mean, it's such an understandable concern for them to have. They develop this idea that their sleep system, it maybe if it isn't broken, but for whatever reason, it's drastically taken a hit.
Hmm.
It's much,
Hmm.
much weaker for them to force sleep to happen, which they didn't realize they were never forcing it to begin with. Um, and I mean, there's it's not like there isn't any benefit to any of the sleep hygiene stuff. I'm sure that there is some benefit to your sleep system if you're doing all the things that you mentioned, where
Hmm.
you're, cutting out all alcohol and caffeine, installing the blackout curtains, not doing the blue light stuff. However, the cycle for people suffering from insomnia, the psychological tax of following all of those rules rigorously far outweighs any chemical benefit. Because I mean, I'm sure that you felt the same way. When I was going through insomnia, my sleep hygiene was in tip top shape, and I know like if I had missed my melatonin by, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes, because I was told that the ideal time to take your melatonin was exactly 2 hours before you go to bed, not 1 minute beforehand, not 1 minute afterwards, or else. So I
Yeah.
would start to develop, oh no, like that's it. I'm
Yeah.
done. Even though I've followed everything else so rigorously. And this goes back to what we were saying before. This is how people start to live life to sleep. Like, it consumes everything that they make. They'll set multiple alarms to make sure that they start doing things in just the right order, and it gives them it's a constant, it's a perfect source of never ending doubt and concern. Did I
Oh,
filter
so
out as
true.
much blue light that I need? Did I do everything exactly the right? I think I was only outside to get that first morning sunlight only for 8.5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. And this sounds outrageous, to somebody who's not suffering from sleep. It's just
Yeah.
it's not going to
Yeah.
be a difference. But for people suffering from insomnia, especially when they're in such a fearful state of mind, I mean, people aren't rational when they're that terrified.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So yeah, it does
Yeah.
way more harm than good.
Yeah. Well, and it's also the first thing that you hear. Like if you go to a
Mhm.
doctor, or a sleep
Yeah,
doctor or any doctor, right? It's always the sleep hygiene stuff, right? And if we've had insomnia for any length of time, you better believe we've tried all of that,
yeah.
and to the letter. And like you said, right? Like there's so much, like these rigid rules and rituals that we place around protecting
Yeah.
the sleep. Again, it comes back to the pedestal, right? The god of sleep. And the point I want to make about this here is that I consider sleep hygiene and these kind of things sleep optimization, right? So, and there's a huge thing about this, like all over right now, like sleep optimization. Um, and it's like, to your point, it's not that this stuff can't be helpful if you don't have insomnia,
Mhm.
but when you do have insomnia, there's something much bigger going on, and that is the conditioned fear response. You can do whatever you want as far as the sleep hygiene things. It's not going to touch that because now this is in your brain, right? This
Yeah.
is a neural pathway that has been created. No amount of blockout blinds or blue light is going to touch that.
Yeah.
So this is where it comes down to our actions and behaviors that show the brain we're safe, right? It has nothing to do with the melatonin. It has nothing to do with the TV screen.
Yeah.
And this is really helpful to understand. Now, a caveat here that I want to mention is that sleep optimization can be great, but it can also heighten um, our pressure. It can heighten pressure. It can keep us in a hyper alert state
Yeah.
because now all of a sudden we're monitoring it, right?
Mhm.
We're going to implement all of these new kind of sleep optimization rituals, routines, and now we're going to check on how they're working,
Yeah.
right? Like what aura rings, sleep trackers, all the
Mhm.
things. And I've worked with many clients, more than I can count, that their sleep issues started with sleep optimization and led to them developing insomnia. Because whenever we're over focused on something, like we decide, oh, this is a problem. My sleep tracker says I'm only getting 5.5 hours or whatever it is.
Mhm.
That can't be. Well, I better do something to fix this. And now we get into fix it mode. Whenever our brain tags something as a potential threat, it isn't long until it is fully convinced that this is a danger,
Yeah.
right? And when that happens, we've got this perceived danger threat. Here comes the alarm bells, right? All
Mhm.
systems are on board, and we are full on fight or flight protective mode.
Yeah.
Not a fun place to be. So this is obviously that hyperarousal is exacerbated, and we find ourselves in a perpetuated struggle.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it doesn't do anything to address the actual root cause of the issue. I mean, if
That's
you
right.
if you committed your whole entire day to from the moment you get out of bed to doing everything in your power to implement every single sleep hygiene trick from, like, let's say 7 o'clock in the morning all the way till 11 o'clock at night, or whenever you go to bed, if your entire day was committed to getting sleep, it's not going to do anything.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. That's just not how it works, right?
Or
Yeah.
actually, let me clarify that a little bit. And this is what's especially damning for people with insomnia. Sometimes they will do everything correctly, and they do get sleep as a result. So it creates
Mhm.
a really confusing data point because they'll think, no, on this night I did everything correctly and I got sleep, but the next night I did everything correctly and it didn't work. So maybe it only works sometimes, or maybe I developed a tolerance to some of these sleep hygiene tricks and behaviors. Maybe I should cycle off some of those things, but which ones do I cycle off? And then you can already hear the spiraling and the all the math that they're trying to figure out to force sleep to happen. And it just muddies the waters even more.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true and and such a good point. And
Yeah.
yeah, you said it beautifully. Well, let's move on to our next point. So our point number 3. The myth here, if I don't sleep well, I can't function the next day. It will ruin my day, etc. All
Mhm.
of these stories that we are telling ourselves. And the truth here is that we have evolved to live on very little sleep and function quite well. And also, we'll come back to this, what we touched on before, this emotional attachment being the key to understanding here. So, what are your first thoughts and points here that you want to make on this, on our third topic?
Yeah, so this topic brings to mind all the times in my insomnia journey where I had a really rough day of sleep or a rough night of sleep, and I was still able to not only perform really well, but I was in a really good mood. And
Hmm.
I had to, that was a very important lesson that I had to reteach myself over and over again. And for for the sport that I care about, there have been a number of times when I was in a very whether I was in a match or I was having an intense training session, I just, it was only helpful to push all of my sleep concerns off to the side because the moment that I didn't, it just made the fear a lot worse. When I let those fears get to me, I do what I would call appeasing insomnia, where you didn't get that much sleep last night. You better not do what you actually want to do, or
Mm-hmm.
remember you're supposed to be in a miserable mood today. So act, and it does
Hmm.
it doesn't help. And yes, of course, if you have a bad night of sleep, you're not going to feel comfortable. But again, that's the better thing. That's the healthier outlook to have when you're still in the journey of recovering from insomnia. I mean, the alternative, if you want, is to let it affect you. Is to tell yourself, yes, no, this is awful and terrible, and I shouldn't allow myself the luxury of feeling good despite having a bad night of sleep. It's like,
Hmm.
do that if you think it's going to be helpful. I don't think it's going to be helpful. Would never help.
Hmm. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It comes back to that emotional attachment and how we talk about in recovery, this experiential learning that has to take place in order for us to actually build that new neural pathway.
Yeah.
And you said this even in earlier in our conversation. It's like, having this understanding how we can have a light night of little sleep
Mhm.
and still have a decent day, right? and
Yeah.
and we can draw up experiences from our past that are definitely going to help us here because we've all experienced that. There's no doubt about it. And then there's also times where, like you said, I actually slept really well. I had a lot of sleep and I didn't feel great the next day, right? I mean, both of these things are true, right? So one is not indicative of the other, right? It is more of that emotional hangover that we bring with us because we have this as big emotional attachment to what the night looks like, to how much sleep we're getting, that creates the story and
Yeah.
the narrative around it. And it's the story and the narrative of I can't have a good day if I haven't slept.
Yeah.
That's a belief. It is not a truth. It is not a fact, right? And it's those beliefs and those stories that actually keep us stuck. So if we can challenge that narrative and say, okay, this is what my brain is telling me. Well, maybe it's not true. Like maybe what if I just acted as though it weren't true? And
Mhm.
let's just see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Let's just see what happens. And I did this many, many, many times throughout my recovery.
Mhm.
And I'd wake up, well, sometimes didn't even wake up because I hadn't slept, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But I get out of bed and I'd be like, really upset by it, right? And I felt all the anxiety, I felt all the things, but I was determined to not let insomnia rule my life. There was
Yeah.
a point in my recovery where I said, no more. Whatever happens, if I sleep or I don't sleep, I'm no longer going to let that write my story. That's just not going to be how my story ends, right?
Yeah.
I'm not dying on that cross. I'll tell you what.
Right.
And
Right.
so and so it was just like so empowering, and it also was the experiential learning that needs to take place in order for us to show our brain, look, it's fine. We're safe. Is it comfortable? No. Is it going to be my best day ever? Maybe not. It
Hmm.
doesn't, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Not every day we have to feel 100%. Not every day we have to, have the best day ever. I think we've also been sold a bill of goods that we're supposed to feel good all the time.
Hmm.
That's just ridiculous. No human feels good 100% of the time, right?
And
We
if
are human.
something's wrong, if you don't like, if you don't feel good all the time, well, that creates another problem that you have to address. And maybe
Right.
sometimes it does, but at the same times, it's like maybe it's better to just make peace with the fact that sometimes you're not going to feel 100% of the time.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, because it's part of the human experience.
Yeah.
We're not going to feel good all the time.
Hmm.
That's just not how it works to be a human being.
Right.
So recognizing and giving ourselves permission to feel down or feel crappy when we do, and knowing that it will pass. If we don't attach meaning to it, if we don't create a big story around it, like, oh,
Mhm.
this is going to be awful, I can't function the next day. That's the story, right? That's
Mhm.
not the truth. And so when we can recognize that for what it was, and I have to tell you, this took me quite a bit of time in my journey, because I was pretty sure this was just all part of my personality, these beliefs,
Mhm.
right? Like I remember saying to one of my coaches, oh no, I understand that most people can function on very little sleep. I'm not one of them.
Mhm.
I remember saying that. And, my coach was like, yeah, Allie, that's actually not true. That's a belief. It's not part of your personality. And I'm like, what? You know,
Uh-huh.
so becoming conscious of these beliefs and how the story that we're telling ourselves keeps us stuck is also a really important part of the journey of recovery. So just to put that in there too.
Yeah, and I think while you were saying that, that reminded me of the very often occurrence that people suffering from insomnia will encounter, where they meet somebody, where they're in the middle of it, they're in the middle of the worst speed bump of their lives, and they meet somebody, maybe a friend or a family member who did not sleep at all, maybe the last night or two, and they looked fine, or not
Yeah.
nearly as devastated as the person suffering from insomnia is going through. And it may
Right, right, right.
and initially the knee-jerk emotional reaction is to feel jealousy, but maybe we could see those as learning moments of, well, okay, I mean, he didn't sleep. He pulled an all-nighter, and he maybe doesn't look great, but he doesn't look hopeless and completely
Mhm,
demoralized and scared.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
and then, of course, what the person with insomnia will do is then say, well, he's just different and I'm special. I'm special in the wrong direction. And so, which is just like, of course, everyone's insomnia is the special case. There's no hope for them. There's no way they can ever recover. They have the worst personality, the worst biology, everything's working against them and stuff. And it's a very understandable fear and concern of them to have. But then as time goes on after they recover, that's just another thing for them to learn, like, oh no, it was just bullshit. Doesn't feel like it right now, but it's at the end of the day, it's just bullshit.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, I remember, going through that, and my husband would have a bad night, and he
Mm.
was totally fine. There was no emotional reaction to
Yeah.
it, right? It was more just like, yeah, that sucked. He was a little annoyed. Oh well, went on with his day. No big
Yeah.
deal. And I was just like, teach me how to do that.
Mhm.
I was like, that's awesome. And then I had one of my best friend, she'll have a bad night and she'll be like, yeah, it's all right. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I recognize that as like, that's where I need to get to, right? Is not having this emotional attachment to how the night looks. And I keep coming back to that because it is so key for the sleep to fall off the pedestal, right? And that's how it is for me now, right? I have a choppy night. Oh well, it's not the end of the world. It's just it's just what happens sometimes. And I
Yeah.
move on. I don't have an emotional reaction to it. So it's our emotional reaction, right? That emotional hangover that we bring with us the next day because we've been in a struggle, fighting against
Mm.
reality the whole night. Like, no, this shouldn't be happening. No, this is not okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's what creates this feeling of dread and hopelessness and anxiety and panic and all of that the next day. Right. It isn't the fact that we didn't sleep. So, yeah, that's just a really key point to get across there, but I love
Mhm.
this conversation. This is a good one, John. Glad
Yeah.
we're talking about
Yeah.
it.
I think it'll help a lot of people. So
I think so too. Yeah, good call on this one. So our fourth point here is the myth, this supplement can fix my sleep. And the truth is, of course, nothing outside of us can produce sleep, only our bodies can do that. So if you want to speak to this, John, this last myth.
yeah, so this kind of ties into what we were talking about before, where I mean, there's a never-ending list of sleep hygiene things that you can do to, in theory, that you could try to force sleep to happen. And supplements, I think they kind of deserve their own. They're of course a part of that category, but it's worth talking about them specifically, I think, because it's a very seductive aspect of sleep hygiene and a very seductive means of controlling sleep because it becomes the magic pill that you
Hmm.
can take. And I mean, it's so specific that we have this concept of delegation where we just outsource all of our responsibilities and ability to sleep in this one thing. If you just do this one easy thing to do, then that's going to fix your sleep. I mean, hey, the medical research can't be wrong. All these experts and professionals can't be wrong. And I mean, this again to bring up the point of, I'm sure that the magnesium is doing something for your body. Yes, I'm sure that if you don't have any issues sleeping, then that's going it. Maybe you get you stay in REM cycles for slightly longer. Sure, but it also creates this it reinforces the idea that there is something wrong with your sleep system, that it's very weak. It's become much weaker for whatever reason, and that I need this and that and the other to make sleep happen. And very
Hmm.
healthy, very, and it's very scary, and it reinforces the wrong ideas.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and it kind of keeps us sort of spinning our wheels and always reaching for that next thing. Like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Right? And we're trying. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you and me both. We could have pages and pages of the supplements and medications and
Mhm.
teas and tinctures and all the things, right? That we tried because when you're in this situation, when you have insomnia, the struggle it feels so big. It takes over your life in so many
Yeah.
ways. And so we're understandably, like you said, looking for that solution, right? That magic elixir. And it just doesn't exist. And it's not that any of these things are bad or wrong. I want to be really clear about that. Like you said, magnesium, whatever, these things it's not that they don't maybe have some health benefits, but the issue becomes when we are taking this thing saying this better make me sleep or else or I'm screwed,
Yeah.
right? So that's where it gets sticky. And
Yeah.
I always like to point out here, the things don't matter. They're neutral. All of these supplements, the medications, the teas, the tinctures, they're neutral.
Yeah.
They really have no bearing on sleep. It's
Yeah.
only produced by our bodies ever. That's just the way it is. That's how sleep works. And none of them are bad. Like if that is the way that you like to take care of yourself, as far as like, I know it's not doing anything for my sleep, but I just like to take magnesium. I think it's helpful for my overall well-being.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. No problem.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at that thing saying, this better work or I'm so screwed, then it is really going to get sticky
Yeah.
because nothing outside of us can produce sleep, right?
Yeah.
So I take all kinds of, vitamins and stuff because I like to. I've always been a health conscious person and I'm going to continue taking those things for my overall well-being. Do I take any of them for sleep? No. I know that they can't do anything for that. That is completely just a way that I like to show myself that supportive self-care by taking whatever vitamins and minerals I want. The other point I want to make right here is about, you mentioned it, delegation.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this teaching about delegation, and I want to clarify it because it gets a bad rap. And so do sleep efforts. We can do another episode on that. But what I want to say about delegation is that there is nothing wrong with delegation per se. It is the exact same thing that we're talking about when we put the power outside of ourselves. Okay. But when we are going through this insomnia struggle, it can be really helpful to use delegation strategically. So it isn't a bad thing. Sometimes we are very aware of this teaching and we will intentionally say, all right, I'm going to take this med or whatever it is, this
Mm-hmm.
supplement.
Yeah.
I understand that it's not really doing anything, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to delegate the effort to that because I want to, because it feels like a nice thing to do. We can strategically delegate when we want to if that is supportive to us. That is not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
What the teaching about delegation is about is that once we kind of understand it, it demystifies it, right? What for one, and also that it's just our bodies. Only that is what can produce sleep. So whenever we give the power to something outside of us, it takes the power away from us. And the power of sleep and all of the way to peace is always found within ourselves. And I think that's a helpful point to make because we're not saying delegation's bad or wrong. We're saying, yeah, use it strategically if it's helpful. Also, nothing outside of us can produce sleep. So as long as we know that, as long as our intention is coming from that place of like self-kindness and self-care and support, it's all good, right? I think it's important to get that point across as well.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, where you said that it's not so much that there's anything wrong with each of these things. I mean, like there are plenty of people who take, I'm sure half a dozen supplements before they go to bed, and they never have insomnia. They don't have insomnia. Never
For
have.
sure.
Well,
For
yeah.
sure.
And it is interesting to see that. Yeah, I think the most helpful thing is to be mindful of delegation. And people, I know that our clients really take that to heart. And knowing that, this just speaks to how difficult insomnia can be. Knowing that, they're fully well aware that there's no benefit to taking these supplements or or these drugs, whatever, but they still take them anyway because it creates it's become like a safety behavior for them. I mean, there's one client that Alina had. I was talking to her about. This client would wean her medication off to the point where it was like 100 milligrams of something. I forget what it was, maybe Ambien. And they wean themselves off to 75, 50, 25 milligrams. And it got to the point that this client would, before bed, lick the medication.
Uh-huh.
Now, of course, this client, I'm sure, knows that there's no actual chemical benefit going on in her body that's helping her sleep.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But it helps bring that person peace.
Yeah, Daniel talks about that as like just a tension release, like when the quote unquote works, right? We talk about how yes, they can work quote unquote by delegation, they can work quote unquote by releasing that tension and that pressure, and even just the act of like doing something, licking it, right? It's like we know that there's no chemical benefit, there's nothing happening there, and it's just it's just like somehow making her feel better. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's like whenever you're ready, that's going to fall away on its own. It's one of these things where there's a lot of different ways we can approach it, and I think everybody's going to be a little bit different, right? Sometimes we can rip the bandage off and just like never look back and like let go of whatever safety behaviors we're doing.
Sure.
And then there's other people that it's like, yeah, it doesn't feel right to rip off the bandage. I'm going to take it nice and slow, and it'll happen organically, and it'll and that's how it was for me. Like I just was like, and there's no pressure. And I'm not afraid of it anymore. That was huge. I had such a huge fear and inner conflict around the meds that it kept me so stuck for so long. I don't have that anymore. I'm so grateful. And
Right.
so now it just doesn't matter, right? It's like, it just doesn't matter. And the truth of the matter is, it never did. But, and this is key, nothing is a problem unless we think it is a problem.
Hmm.
It's just true. If you start thinking that it's a problem, that you're licking this pill or that you're taking this or that or whatever, your mind's going to flag that as a problem.
Yeah.
And when it does flag it as a problem, now we have an issue,
Yeah.
right? We create this mountain out of a molehill. And if we keep thinking it's a problem, this is the same way insomnia develops, by the way. If we keep thinking it's a problem, our brain, this brilliant thing that it is, it actually creates a neural pathway around
Yeah.
that. Now it's a loop. And now it's such a big problem that every time, this comes up, that neural loop is it's just like a neural feedback loop.
Yeah.
So this is how the brain works. It's not it's really actually makes so much sense. And this can happen with absolutely anything. So nothing is a problem unless we think it is. And when we think it is, the brain's going to run with that. And
Yeah.
it's going to really see it as a threat. So all of these things become perceived danger responses, right? So it's worth noting. It's just worth noting. That's
Yeah.
probably a whole other podcast, but
And this might introduce too complicated of a concept before we head on out, but uh, I think that I mean, to the earlier example of the person licking the supplement or the medication or whatever it was, that by itself is not an issue in my opinion because it's not interfering with their lives at all. Like on a
Mhm.
practical, tangible level, like who cares? So long as the medication isn't expensive, whatever, and it's not costing them hundreds of dollars or something. If they just take
Sure.
medication before bed, that's not taking away from their life at all whatsoever. In my opinion, it only becomes unhelpful. And I have a client who's taking THC, and they just consistently every night, and
Mhm.
they're done with that. They don't want like THC. They don't like to get high every night, and they especially don't like
Mhm.
the fact that they have to take it to get and they just don't like consistently taking it.
Sure.
And that,
Yeah.
in my opinion, that's when it becomes unhelpful because it's taking away from the life that they actually want to live.
Yeah. Well, the brain has tagged it as a problem.
Yeah.
So if it's a problem for them, then it's a problem. This
Yeah.
is this is what I'm saying. Like that, and to your point, millions of people probably take THC every night to sleep, and they don't care. It's not a
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah.
But because your client believes it's a problem,
Yeah.
and it will continue to be so because now the brain is identified as dangerous, and now there's a neural loop. It's
Mhm.
just how the brain works, right?
Yeah.
So it yeah, so it's like another conversation probably because but I totally agree with you. It's like when we decide something is a problem, we are either going to have to look at our story around it
Mhm.
and, look at how we're interacting with that, or we're going to have to make a change.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Either way, there has to be a rewiring that occurs in order for that perceived danger to not, be causing this kind of survival response.
Right.
So yeah. Yeah. And our very last point today is number 5, how the misconceptions fuel insomnia and the fear response. I think that we've made that quite clear
Yeah.
in our discussion today. But if there's any last thoughts you have on this, please share them, John.
Yeah. It's funny that, at the end of the day, all these misconceptions, almost all of them, if not all of them, are well intentioned.
Yeah.
And it's important to, I mean, I've lost track of the number of people in my support system and medical professionals that I talk to that were trying to help me out to the best of their ability, but at the end of the day, it really just caused more harm than good. So, it's the key to overcoming that is education and learning about
Hmm. Hmm.
what is actually the better path going forward, what's helpful and what's not helpful, and then making your own. it becomes empowering because that person then decides, well, okay, with this information, what's the right steps going forward for me?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Hmm.
Absolutely. It's, when for me, I agree with everything you said. And also, I would just add these misconceptions fuel this insomnia and the fear response because they make implications that if we don't do this or this and that,
Hmm.
then we're gonna die, or there's gonna be a big
Yeah,
problem, right?
literally, yeah.
And so the pressure that it creates is just really, really huge. And of course, we know, and the big education teaching on this is where there is pressure, sleep is not going to come. Sleep does not thrive under pressure.
Right.
And the lower the stakes, the easier things get, right? So when we have really high stakes and it's like, oh, I got to do all my sleep hygiene, I got to do this and this and this, that is a ton of pressure. The stakes are really high, and it's just not conducive for sleep. Sleep is effortless,
Yeah.
right? That is just really where we are, and it doesn't come down to any of these tricks or hacks or anything like that. It is always something that is happening and produced within our own bodies,
Hmm.
and it is an effortless and a biological process, and the body will always take the sleep it needs for survival. I think that's another important point to throw out there. um, yeah, it's just really helpful if we can lower the stakes and lower the pressure. So yeah, that's where I would end that, you guys. You're gonna be okay. I think
Hmm.
John and I can attest that this is not a forever experience, right? Like you mentioned, with the right education and a big dose of courage and great deal of self-kindness
Yeah.
and probably more time than any of us would want. Like, let's be honest, it takes time, but
Hmm.
you really will get there, right? So
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
will. So John, if you want to just tell people how they can find you, give them your information real quick.
Sure. Yeah. So the name of my private practice is Insomnia to Peace. You can find it on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Anyone knows how to Google should be able to easily find me and my work. And yeah, looking forward to
Awesome.
helping anyone out.
Awesome. Insomnia to Peace. You can find John, and you can find me at Sacred Sleep Coach on Instagram, my website, sacredsleepcoach.com. I appreciate you all being here. I also want to let you know that we definitely have a supportive community for you. If you're finding you need more support, more education, find us at thesleepcoachschool.com. We would love, love, love to help you on your journey out of the struggle. Thanks so much, community. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Hi, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope you found the video you just saw full of inspirational content and full of educational content as well, because that's really what we try to do here in the school. We try to educate and inspire. And if you're finding that things are clicking for you and sleep is happening easier and you're leaving the struggle, please let us know in the comment section, because we live for that. We live for hearing how somebody is finding sleep and life becoming lighter and easier. And not only are you doing us a huge favor as sleep coaches and like filling our tank with that gas that makes us never want to stop doing this, but you're also helping the community. You're helping by inspiring other people, and by commenting, you're telling YouTube that this was interesting, and YouTube feeds our content to more people so that they can discover our teachings and things get easier for them. So again, if you found things getting easier for you, please let us know in the comment section. We can't wait to hear from you.